Good morning and happy Father's Day. My name is Tony Fisher and I serve this congregation as its minister. Welcome into our time together this morning. Let's start by singing. Our opening song is Here We Have Gathered. Words will be on the screen. Music provided by Stu Shelton and Kevin Malden.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Greater Naples. My name is Patsy Sachs, and I'm your worship associate for this morning. We're grateful for you or have found us online. Our mission states we're a welcoming congregation, freely seeking intellectual growth and spiritual growth. We strive to create a larger community of peace, justice, and love. Even in this time of celebration, each of us is encouraged to grow spiritually in fellowship with others by joining in worship and in online opportunities that offer education, reflection, and discussion. We try to do all this in the spirit of love and acceptance, reaching out with our hearts, offering mutual support in these times of separation. If you're new to us and interested in getting on our mailing list or finding out more about this wonderful congregation, we urge you to check out our website or send an email to office@naples.org. We would love to hear from you. And please take a peek at the email notices that Anna sends out each week that offer you links to learning, fellowship opportunities. You can join in the Tuesday meditation, the wonderful Wednesday program, the question and answer session with the minister on Thursdays, spiritual practices on Fridays, and more to come. There's also our virtual coffee hour page on Facebook. And if you're watching live, you can find the chat button. Connect with others who are watching this morning. Next Sunday, our service will be a streaming of the service from GA. We'll have publishing instructions for how to tune in. We're urging all of you to watch. Virtual GA is available June 24th through the 28th. The fee is $150, but we have funds that can reimburse you if you can't afford that after you have registered. You need to talk to the office. On July the 8th, Wonderful Wednesdays is a walk through our garden. Tune in at 7. And now, let us center by finding a comfortable position, taking a deep breath, and entering into this time of worship together as Stu plays. Thank you.
We gather out of a feeling of hope for a planet where justice can prevail. We come from a place of need, seeking a community of caring. We dive in with a curious mind, ready to encounter new perspectives. We enter bearing our grief, searching for peace in a time of uncertainty. We show up with a sense of passion, with a vision for the future. We arrive from many different places, seeking to share our journeys, finding sustenance in community, open to the possibility of transformation, and hopefully a reason to believe that all will be well. Please join me in the chalice lighting words on your screen. May this flame stir our hearts and remind us of our mission to be truly welcoming, to grow in mind and spirit, and to widen the circle of peace, justice, and love. Good morning again, and welcome into this shared time together. I have missed your presence here on Sunday mornings during this time of enforced separation. Since the middle of March, we have been meeting like this. It would be nice to stop meeting like this, but unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be any close end in sight. We have endured this time individually and as we have connected with one another through various means, collectively. Our own trials and our nation's trials have been ever present in our minds and hearts. We are a social animal, after all, and we need one another to affirm our presence, to affirm ourselves, to know face to face that we are welcomed, we are appreciated, and we are loved. And as wonderful as technology is, Zooming or YouTubing is not quite the same as being together in person. And on this particular morning, I feel the separation even more so, because on this day, when I'm usually heading off to General Assembly and then perhaps to some personal vacation time, I try to create a time of celebration of our year together, and a celebration of those people who have done the work of the congregation, who have rolled up their sleeves and made things happen. Sometimes I offer a photo montage of our year. Sometimes we do this celebration through music, and that's what we'll be doing today. I did toy with the idea of asking for photos again, but I think we'll save that for when it's time to do our in-gathering, assuming that we can't yet even then gather in person, or at least not in large numbers. Having images of each of you to put on the screen and to share with one another, I think will be a good time to do that. But we do have a celebration in music today. Last summer, we did a service on the spirituality of jazz. Stu Shelton was here. And today, Stu will be joined by Kevin Malden, principal bassist of the Naples Philharmonic, and as you are beginning to discover, a darn good jazz bassist to boot. So today we'll celebrate with music and some thoughts about jazz and how this special artistic form relates to what it takes to keep a congregation going, a congregation running smoothly. Our service title is Putting Our Hands Together. As in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me. time of sharing, we honor the day, Father's Day, understanding that it is fraught, like Mother's Day, with all sorts of remembrances, good and sometimes not so good. But we do honor those who have mentored us, who have supported us, who have guided us on our way to who we are and what we can be. This morning especially, we honor Peter Murphy, husband of Linda, who passed 5 years ago, but who is still deeply remembered. Linda writes, "His love is still felt greatly by me, our daughter Elise and son Scott, and the grandchildren, Tyler and Cade. Linda has provided us with a beautiful peace plant for this morning's service. The plant will be taken and put into our garden by our garden crew, joining the many beautiful plants out there for us to see and visit in the days and weeks ahead. And we honor each and every one of you who hold joy and sorrow together, as difficult as that is, during individual times of trial, individual times of joy, and the struggle that our nation is going through right now. We honor those people who are on the front lines of many different pandemics, coronavirus and the pandemic of racism, those who are standing up for justice, who are showing themselves true to the American spirit and fighting for the importance of all lives. Let's enter into this time of meditation and prayer. We take this moment to sit together in love and celebrate the gifts that each of us brings to this time and place. On this particular day, we honor all of you who have answered the call to service, who have given your time and talent for the well-being of this community, its breadth and its depth. When there was a need, you stepped up. Night or day, on weekends or holidays, you rolled up your sleeves to pitch in. Elected or duly appointed, quietly, anonymously, and unbidden, you did what needed doing. Sometimes with the help of many hands, other times alone, you gave of yourself. We honor your families and your loved ones who supported your efforts, worried for you when things piled up, and perhaps grumbled at you for the extent of your commitment. And for all things, great and small, that so many of you have given this congregation, we take time today to sit in quiet gratitude. Let's take some time in silence together.
Before I begin, I just wanted to thank Stu and Kevin for their wonderful music. We've really been enjoying it. Thank you. And as today's Father's Day, I'm going to do a reading about fathering. It's called I Believe in Fathering. It's by Evan Carville Zimmer. And he serves in the East region in the areas of youth ministry and youth adult ministry and intercultural competency work, as well as the primary contact for congregations in upstate and central New York. I believe in fathering. I believe in the radical idea that men have the full capacity to nurture. Hair bows and baseballs, cooking and creativity, tools and tiaras, camping and dancing, snuggles and shrieks of delight. Too many fathers don't believe in their own fathering. Too many are scarred by their own fathers to hear what their heart says otherwise. Too many have known fathers who, faced with a quivering lip and tears, could only say, "Man up." Too many have known fathers who knew only yelling and hitting. Too many have known fathers who lost sight of their sacred role of protector and became tormentor. But I believe in fathering. When a human being gestates and gives birth, her brain changes permanently. A father's brain changes permanently too, changes as he rocks his baby to sleep, and delights in baby games, and soothes bumps and bruises. A father earns his new neurobiology. In a world where too many mothers hand their co-parent directions more specific than those given to babysitters, where a father out with his kids is asked, "Are you babysitting? Where's Mom?" Where fathers are often the punchline. I believe in fathering. I believe in the radical idea that men have the full capacity to nurture, whether their children come through birth, adoption, or fostering, through scouts, sports, Sunday school, or youth group. I've known too many gay dads, too many single fathers, too many men raising children others couldn't, to believe otherwise. I believe we all, especially our children, deserve to know that the human capacity to nurture belongs to every one of us. I believe in fathering.
It takes so much for a congregation like this to work. It's great to have a good staff, but a staff isn't anything without a congregation, without folks who envision something different, something new, a new direction, without folks who roll up their sleeves and attend committee meetings, who make things happen, who weed and plant, who clean and offer each other support in times of need, who take part in worship, who take part in activities outside the walls of the congregation. A congregation is everyone pitching in and making something special happen. This congregation is a great example of that. Folks who give of their time and their talent and their treasure to make this a special place. And for that, we're grateful. This is the opportunity you have during our service to think about your generosity, your gratitude together, and write a check or make a donation through our website to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Greater Naples and its mission and vision. Finance Committee, as I mentioned last week, reminds us that a check is always the best way to do it. The office is open. Mail is being received. So please, whatever way you do it, donate. Keep this thing going. I believe in you. I know you believe in each other. The morning's offering for the ongoing mission of this congregation will be gratefully received.
Our next poem is entitled Interrelationship. It's by Thich Nhat Hanh from a collection of poems entitled Call Me by My True Names. You're me and I am you. Isn't it obvious we're inter are? You cultivate the flower in yourself so that I will be beautiful. I transform the garbage in myself so that you will not have to suffer. I support you. You support me. I'm in this world to offer you peace. You are in this world to bring me joy.
So just this past February, when we were still gathering together, we had a wonderful celebration on the pavilion, and Stu and Kevin were both part of that ensemble. And as is my want, usually when I'm in the presence of a really smooth jazz ensemble, I watch. And I love to watch as they take on the different roles, shifting and taking the spotlight, and then actively supporting the next one up in line, moving back into the chord progression or the rhythm, the bass line, smiling at each other as they appreciate the creativity that somebody puts into their own lick, their own time in the spotlight, gladly filling the role of support when it's their turn to do that. The communication that goes on in a jazz ensemble between people, not just musically, but through their eye contact and their body language, is always fun to watch and meaningful, and speaks a good deal to the creation of a community in that particular moment, in that particular space. Our opening words today spoke to the varied reasons we come to join together in community. Some do arrive here seeking shelter from a beautiful but sometimes scary world. Some come out of loneliness or isolation. Some come for a need to be with other people from a place of hurt or suffering to try and find a community of caring people. Many come seeking wisdom or understanding and perhaps even transformation, curious about how others have formed their ideas about this world and how it works. Some arrive hoping to find a place where they can actively engage in the matters of social justice. At the same time we show up, we carry with us a certain set of beliefs formed by our nature and through our life experience. Sometimes we can articulate those beliefs clearly, and sometimes our deepest beliefs are reflected more in how we act with one another and how we live our lives in the world, what we give our greatest attention to. Some might say their worldview is pretty well set, while others would consider themselves still on the road of discovery. The things that are of greatest importance to us here range from the personal and immediate, especially when we're struggling with illness or family concerns, to questions of ultimate concern, those things we honor to be greater than ourselves, whether they be family or community, maybe a God of our own understanding, or perhaps a transcendent sense of being part of the interdependent web of all existence. We are a remarkable group of people with all those things working within and among us. Once we've arrived here and spent some time getting to know the folks around us and have begun to understand what this shared journey might be about, once we move past the initial jitters and settling in time and find ourselves participating even in the smallest way, we begin to understand that this is something more, and understand what everyone else seems to know, that community feels good. We begin meeting people and forming new friendships, and at some point, That sense of walking in the door for the first time and finding something that feels right, maybe even finding a feeling of home, at some point that first flush begins to deepen into a sense of connection and belonging. And with a sense of belonging, we might start to think about how we might pitch in, sharing a little bit more of our time and our talent with something that has become important to us. Now, there are always people who roll up their pant legs and wade right in, who, in the words of Mark Piercy, submerge in the task, who stand in the line and haul in their places. And I've always admired those people that just step right in. Although I'm more akin to those folks who watch and wait, figuring out where their talents might fit in, maybe waiting for somebody to ask, and then easing themselves into the rhythm of the community. And let's face it, there are even those who shy away from pitching in because committee work or helping in the kitchen has little appeal compared to the stimulation of finding like-minded people and being with them and talking. Whether you fit into any of these types or have hovered uncertainly on the margins of participation here at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Greater Naples, whether you've been here only a short time or for quite some time, what you may have missed, what you may not have quite seen, is that right here in the midst of the hustle and bustle, here between the cacophony of coffee hour and the peace of the garden, here between a meaningful sermon and an inspiring piece of music, here between one end of the building and the next, even here during this time of separation, there is a path to self-discovery, a way to deeper connection and appreciation, a doorway, if you will, to spiritual growth. The doorway opens when you begin to consider service or voluntarism as not a chore, but a kind of spiritual practice. And where you might be wondering, does jazz fit into all of this? Well, noted jazz critic Arnold Sundgaard, writing way back in 1955, once wrote that jazz, by its very nature, is a kind of freedom rooted in the sense of responsibility. Each soloist is guaranteed unrestricted freedom, but must exercise this privilege always with the other players in mind. Between them, they possess a treasure, a common rhythm, supporting a community of sounds out of which a single voice, each in its own turn, can be sustained and strengthened. Which sounds a little bit like Unitarian Universalism. So, let me take a step back and maybe a big stretch and offer this analogy. Imagine yourself walking into a club or concert hall where a jazz performance is just about to take place. At first, you might enjoy sitting and watching and listening and maybe moving a little to the rhythms. Then you notice that the players keep shifting. Someone will sit in for a while and blend with the ensemble, and then they'll take some time out. In fact, you begin to notice that the whole audience is beginning to take part in the concert, taking their turns, sometimes soloing, sometimes keeping the beat, sometimes following the chord progression, always doing their best to support the whole. At the best of times in congregational life, this is what's going on. You show up and you look around and maybe you feel the energy. You watch and listen for a while, and then you notice that what's creating the energy is a shared sense of being somehow in tune with one another, where folks are taking on different parts and where different groups carry the theme at different times, where one person may have only a few notes to play and a lot of rests, and the other only a few rests and a lot of notes. And then the roles reverse. And since we're talking about Unitarian Universalism, You know that we're not all singing the same tune at the same time, but we are working hard to listen and blend and harmonize, appreciating even the occasional dissonance, especially when we work to get it resolved. Altogether, what you realize is that everyone is working and supporting one another and creating something that rises above the individual players. The doorway I mentioned is a doorway into a different way of thinking, a different attitude, a different way of approaching congregational involvement. It's the idea of sitting together for a minute of silence on Sunday morning, or washing the dishes in the kitchen, or jumping into committee work. Anything we can do can be used as a tool to deepen our connection with each other and with life. The quiet of the garden and the bustle of the office are not seen as separate things, but two aspects of the same process. When we move from sitting in the audience with a consumer mindset to being active participant, and then seeing in each moment, in each interaction, in each task, a way of serving the whole with grace and with intentionality, then we find that the business of a congregation can be as meaningful and as transformative as our time together on Sunday mornings. Service becomes a spiritual practice. So, today we celebrate those who have figured this out, those who are on the path, and those who are just stepping out on their own journey of discovery. In his book, Serving with Grace, Lay Leadership as a Spiritual Practice, Eric Walker Wickstrom first reminds us that the most superficial and practical reason to get involved is that the congregation needs you. We are, after all, a voluntary organization that depends on donations, not just of our financial resources, but of our time and talent as well. Without you, this place doesn't run. From a purely practical perspective, participation in the life of a spiritual community also gives you an acknowledged stake, a voice in the ongoing conversation about who we are and where we're going and what we need to do to get there. That said, the hope is that participating in those kinds of conversations will inspire a deepening search of your own, trying to find answers to foundational questions, and also a deeper feeling of connection or belonging that will inspire you to put your spiritual roots down and make the community your home, infusing it as you go with your own core values. The shift from passive observer and consumer to active shareholder, invested in the health and future of the congregation, is the first big step. Then it becomes a matter of broadening and deepening our perspective. Our congregational mission, or if you will, the music we are working to create together, speaks to welcome and support of individual and collective growth. It talks of building a wider community of peace, justice, and love. Thinking about the work we do together individually or collectively towards these ideals, thinking of it as a spiritual practice, helps shift and enlarge our perspective. The idea of any spiritual practice is to get out of our own heads and the narrow sphere of our own individual concerns, recognize our interdependence, that we are and connect with something greater than ourselves. This approach shifts us away from the notion of simply volunteering a few hours here or there, and instead brings us into a connection with others where our shared meanings and needs and desires intertwine, expectations and fears and hopes all meeting together, although serving the common mission that binds us and moves us forward. Service as a spiritual practice uses the day-to-day activities of a congregation as the focus of its practice. Whatever we choose to do, however we put our own gifts to use, we seek to use the work at hand to practice the mission of the congregation, to make beautiful music, to offer ourselves up with the kind of exuberance and love that we see in a beautiful jazz ensemble. Let's close with these words from the Reverend Ted Loder. Spirit of life, empower us to be bold participants rather than timid saints in waiting in the difficult ordinariness of now. To exercise the authority of honesty rather than defer power or deceive to get it. To influence someone for justice rather than impress anyone for gain. And by grace, to find treasures of joy, of friendship, of peace, hidden in the fields of the daily we are given to plow. This coming week, you may receive an invitation to offer what you think might be a way to invest yourself a little deeper into this congregation. I hope you'll respond and look forward to that possibility. Until then, stay safe, stay at home, but send your heart out into the world in peace. Have courage, hold on to what is good, return to no person evil for evil, strengthen the faint-hearted, support the weak, help the suffering, honor all beings, and have a wonderful day.